We are in parsha Baha'alotcha. Now in parsha Baha'alotcha, starts the juicy parshiot. Until now, we have Bamidbar as a bunch of numbers. Not so, with the exception of Sota, a possible blowing up of a woman if she was found guilty of adultery, or the Nazir who takes upon himself to not drink wine or anything else, and all the rules that go into that, and also the 12 tribes bringing their gifts. Really, there was nothing exciting for those two parshiot. Suddenly we come to this parsha, and we start off nice, it's very nice as it were, but then it keeps building up and building up and building up. And what I mean, it starts off with the lighting of the menorah, then it goes to people coming to Moshe saying, we missed Pesach, we missed bringing the offering because we were Tamei Nefesh, we were on the Chevra Kedisha Zora, we buried a person, so we weren't pure enough to bring we weren't Roy to bring the Pesach offering, which is the only time actually they brought the Pesach offering in all the 40 years that they were in the desert, only the second year, because, and I'm going through this just so do you have an overview, just because they couldn't circumcise their children, because the I believe the north wind wasn't blowing, and the north wind is what makes apparently you heal from the circumcision. So while they were in the desert, in the wilderness, they didn't have this. It was therefore a matter of endangering life. When it's a possible endangering of a life, then one does not circumcise the child. So as a result, for the next 39 years, they would not be able to circumcise the child. As a result of that, they couldn't eat the Pesach offering. But that whole thing was a disgrace to the Jewish people, because in reality, Hashem wanted them to enter into Israel in 3 days, which would have meant that everything could have happened. Fine, but they didn't, so that was next. Then after that, you have the other issue of, what was it? You went from Pesach Sheni, and then we went to also the understanding that Moshe can talk to God whenever he so desires, and that we're going to find out is because he separates from his wife. Then we also have the establishment of the Mishkan itself and how it is going to travel, which we also dealt with previously. And then we also we set the camps up, we see how they're moving, very nice. Then we also see of Chovav or Yitro, who wants to leave Bnei Yisrael, and the question is, why is he leaving? Is he going to convert his family? Is he going just to he's had enough, as it were? And Moshe's response to that, I don't know if we're going to get to all this, but if we do, I'll get as far as I can. I'm just trying to tell you, this is amazing parsha. It's so full of things that we also have Vayhi ben Aaron v'Yom Moshe, what we say every single time we open the Aron. It's in this very parsha, and what's more interesting about it is you have a backward nun separating it out, and Rashi explains that really this shouldn't be there. It was obviously it should be there, but it's out of place, but that's something else. And it was to separate the next part, which I'm on chapter 11 at this point, where the nation starts to complain in God's eyes, in God's ears, and say, we want meat, all we have is this man, and so we have, and it's crazy. We used to have fish in Egypt for free. What exactly does that mean? They got it for free. So then Hashem describes what the man looks like, obviously, and what it tasted like, saying they're complaining for absolutely nothing. Then Moshe complains to God and says, Hashem, give me help. I can't take these people anymore. They're torturing me. Well, I didn't bear these people. That why you don't love me? And God says, okay, you're going to get the 70 elders with you, and I'm going to take from you spiritual energy from you and give it to them, because I'm not giving any more of spiritual energy, as it were, or prophecy. And so Moshe challenges God and says, you really believe that you can satisfy these people? It's an impossibility. You're not going to do it. And again, what does that mean? And why wasn't he punished for that insurrection against God. Then you have the stories of Eldad and Medad, who are prophesizing, and Joshua tells Moshe, put him in jail. And Moshe gives a famous line, I wish everybody would be a Navi. Probably because they would see what's going on. Then we see what happens to those people who were complaining, namely they die in a plague. But finally, the last piece, that is an amazing thing also. Miriam and Aaron go out against their brother Moshe and start saying, how dare you separate from your wife? Why did you divorce her? We all heard God speak, and God comes and says, we hear that Moshe is the most humble man alive, and Hashem comes to defend Moshe, and ultimately Miriam gets struck with saras, and Aaron doesn't. So what's the cover up there? Why didn't Aaron also get covered? Why didn't he also get saras? And why did Miriam get saras? And was she right? Was she wrong? And that's where we end off. That she's punished, and we wait for her for 7 days, and then we go into the next parsha, which is Shalach, the spy mission. Like I said, this is an amazing parsha. There's so many topics going on here, and if you could spend literally probably a year just on this parsha. And and in day schools, an interesting thing about day schools is they force the teacher, if you will, to teach the first 2 chapters of the first 2, in other words, in order, by Midbar, Naso, and finally Baha'alotcha. By the time to get to Baha'alotcha, it's already the middle of the year. So the kids are so bored because all they show were numbers. But if they would start off with these parsha and then go back, it probably would be a better thing for the kids because they'd be more into it at that point. But okay, what can you do? So now let's go into the beginning. Okay, now we're going to start, and hopefully, like I said, I'm going to cover a lot. Hopefully, I'll cover a lot. So Moshe said to Hashem said to Moshe, saying, "Dabir Aaron, speak to Aaron." And what should you do? Love and say to him, when you kindle the lights, or when you bring the lights up, when you kindle the lamps, we're talking about the menorah. Elmul Panei menorah, toward the face of the menorah, and then it says, I'll use this, Ya'iru Shavat Hanerot. You shall the 7 lamps cast light. So in here, Rashi goes to the whole thing, but the ArtScroll says it very nicely. So let's look at the ArtScroll on page 774. It says the commentators discuss why this passage regarding the menorah is placed immediately after the long recitation of the offerings of the tribal leaders. Citing the Midrash Tanchuma, Rashi comments that Aaron was chagrined that every tribe represented by its leader had a role in dedicating the new tabernacle, while he and his tribe of Levi were excluded. Consequently, Hashem comforted him by saying that his service was greater than theirs, because he would prepare and kindle the menorah. So you have a better service than they do, don't worry about it. That's how Rashi looks at it. The Ramban explains why the menorah was singled out for this consolation instead of the other more auspicious rituals such as the Yom Kippur service, which must be performed exclusively by the Kohen Gadol. He also, by the way, the Ramban, which he's not saying, he also explains that it doesn't make sense that Aaron would be satisfied with the menorah or even with the sacrifices, because he was commanded to do that. What was bothering Aaron was that his tribe, or he, didn't think to volunteer to bring karbanos to the dedication of the temple and all the other things that were going on. They didn't think to that. It was only the other tribes who did. That's what he was bothered by. And Hashem comes and says, don't worry about it. Your service is more important. Now, there's 2 ways to look at that. Okay? One is, you have an argument in the Gemara. Well, actually a statement, not even an argument. It's a statement of the Gemara. One who is obligated to do something gets more reward than one who is not obligated to do something. If I volunteer to do something, I'm not getting the same money, reward, as you who have to do it. Why? Seems unfair, right?
Yeah, it seems like it would be the other way around.
Right, it should be. If I volunteer, I'm volunteering for doing it.
It's your job.
Right.
But if you're volunteering.
Right, so what would you say?
If it's your job, that means the person picked you for that. I meaning you're more qualified than someone who volunteered that wasn't picked.
Okay, maybe, but let's say something that is not high tech. I have a job that I go into libraries, okay, and they say you're going to shelve the books, and I'm going to pay you $5 an hour for that. Fine, and I say great. Then you come and say I want to volunteer to do it. What do you get paid for volunteering? Absolutely nothing. But the question is, he wants to do it. I'm doing for a job. So why is it that he gets nothing and I get $5 an hour?
Maybe so he was hired to do the job. So I guess maybe the fact that he's obligated, he has to do it.
But I'm saying, why should that be? Why should we look at that obligation as better than if somebody volunteers? So the rabbis say a very interesting statement, that when I volunteer to do something, I'm doing it because I want to. There's no Yetzer Hara involved in that. There's no evil inclination saying, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. When I'm obligated to do something, suddenly the Yetzer Hara says to me, you know, you could be doing so much more. He's paying you $5 an hour. You get a job for $7 an hour, $10 an hour. What are you wasting your time here for? Don't do this. No. Tell the boss you don't want to do that, okay? So my Yetzer Hara is constantly yelling at me and saying, you can do this, you can do that, as compared to when I don't have a Yetzer Hara because I'm volunteering. So fine. Then I can, so that's why the reward is not as great, because the reward is based upon the effort. And if I have to keep arguing with myself, as it were, to do this,
I get up and go to work. I want to sleep longer, right?
Right. The best thing is work you get paid for. Minyan. I have to wake up at a certain time in order to get to the minyan on time, in order that I can pray Shemona Esrei with them. So that's a hard, again, once you understand the Shemona Esrei, I'm davening, so I have to get there in time that I can say Shemona Esrei with them. And of course, I have to be there for Baruch Hu, for those who go really quick. Okay? But the point is, I have to get myself out of bed, because that payment I don't see. When it comes to mitzvot, we don't see the payment. When it comes to work, I've never seen anybody, I'm trying to think if it's true, but for the most part, 99% of people, even if they've been drinking the night before, and have been partying all night long, and have a hangover, or have a migraine, whatever the heck they have to punch in at 8 or 7 or 6, they're there. They don't want to be fired. They may not be as productive, but they're going to punch in. Yeah.
Well, they work at the post office and it's New Year's Eve.
And?
They call in sick, or they call in for a leave or something. They don't go up.
99% they don't do that. I'm saying 99% of people will show up on time. And I'm saying everybody. I said 99%. Again, you always have one person who won't do it. I mean, okay, so they don't do it. A couple of people. But for the most part, the system runs. And by the way, when they do call up like that, it's a demerit, and they're looking at losing a job. So again, the question is, do they want to lose their job? They have to figure that out. So I don't know what case you're talking about specifically, but I'm just saying in general. I'm talking in general terms. Okay, that's how people operate. So that's why but we say that the Yetzer Hara is doing that to you, saying, you can sleep a little longer. I mean, how many times have you looked at the alarm clock that said, let's say you're waking at 7:15, and it said 7:13. You woke up and you're, okay, get up and you say, I'll wait for the alarm to go off. I'll wait. 7:15, it's enough time. And you're always late. But 7:15 is good. Okay. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying one is always late with that. Okay. Now, so like I said, the Ramban is looking. He explains, based in part on the Tanchuma, that the kindling of this passage alludes to a later menorah, that of the miracle of Chanukah. This is a famous Ramban. Hashem was alluding to Aaron that his role was greater than that of the leaders, because there would be a time when the temple service would be discontinued by the Syrian Greeks, and the Torah would be on the verge of being forgotten. Only the faith and heroism of the Hasmoneans, a family of Aaron's priestly descendants, would succeed in driving out the enemy, purifying the temple, and once more kindling the menorah after a tragic hiatus of many years. Thus Hashem comforted Aaron by telling him that his family would one day save the nation. The offerings of the tribal leaders were great and impressive, but they were temporary. Aaron's contribution would be eternal. In explaining,
Like when you say like the Hezbon, what did you say, the one of Aaron's descendants or
his descendants, yeah?
Right? So they drove out the people who were in the temple.
The Syrian Greeks.
Okay, so when the first temple was destroyed, and we went to Babylon, or wherever we were sent to, when we came back, Persia, when we came back, what was the temple? How did we rebuild the temple?
They let us.
Right, but
Cyrus told us to rebuild the temple, Koresh.
right.
So it was a small temple we rebuilt.
Okay. Well, it wasn't like the first. It wasn't like the first time we built the temple. Or was it the first time we built the temple? Was that just a mission? I'm confused because I thought the temple was like. I'm confused I'm confused as to the timeline of the big temple, like David built.
Shlomo, actually, Shlomo.
Right.
Right.
And David's all finished, and then.
No, David died.
David's the first one.
Right, Shlomo is David's son.
Right.
So David was not allowed to build a temple. Shlomo builds a temple. He builds a temple. It's much smaller than Herod's temple, just for size purposes.
Right.
Smaller, but it's more miraculous. Things are happening in Shlomo's temple that are more miraculous. So what happens is, after the temple is destroyed, and then we rebuild it under Koresh, Cyrus, and that's Nehemiah and so on and so forth, and then it's destroyed later by the Romans. That's the history of the temple.
So wait, are there 3 temples then?
No, 2. It's only 2. You have the Mishkan,
Oh, okay.
and then you have the temple, and then the second
So
temple.
wait, was the Mishkan bigger than the first temple?
The Mishkan was smaller.
So it went from Mishkan.
The Mishkan is the smallest. The first temple is bigger, and then the first temple is bigger than the Mishkan. And the second temple, because Herod was a big builder, he liked to make expansions. So he expanded he did a lot of building, but then he also built the temple because he thought that if he did that, the Jews would love him. Well, that wasn't true. What? The Persians are way beyond. They're back in the first.
Who's Haran?
Herod was a Roman.
Wait.
Herod was a Roman before. He was actually not even Roman. He was what was he? An Idumean. But that's the Roman Empire. We're looking at the Roman Empire.
So a Roman or someone in the Roman Empire built the second temple?
He
was a question if he was being Jewish, actually, right?
No, it's no question. He wasn't Jewish.
He wasn't?
No. What happened was the Chashmonayim. Okay. The Chashmonayim built, again, they're the ones who we're talking about. So they live in Nora. Their descendant would mess up because they were all Kohanim. So what should have happened was after they rededicated, according to the Ramban, after they rededicated the temple, they should have looked for the descendant of David or Shlomo, and which wouldn't be that. I guess it wouldn't have been that hard in those days, unlike today, which we just don't know. But in those days, people were pretty well knew who they were coming from, and so they should have put the king up, but they didn't.
Why didn't that happen when they first built the second temple?
Wait, before we get there. Okay? So now what happens is they maintain control. They're not supposed to maintain control because they're Kohanim. So Hashem punishes them for that. And so they only keep the kingdom for 200 years. It's only 200 years that they get to keep the kingdom. And with all the time, again, they should have relinquished the kingdom. Why didn't they do it?
When it was first long, it was 70 year.
You got me on this.
Came back after 70 years.
First of all, I'm not sure if they didn't. Because Gedaliah, I think, was from that. No, that was Jeremiah.
From David.
So you have to think. Jeremiah was there. They destroyed it. So Gedaliah was here. No, I think he was of the line. And they, why didn't they put the king back? I'm not sure. You have to, first of all, you have to know if they did or did not. I mean, I'm not sure if they did not. I'm not sure about that. But it's but everything was running. And on top of that, the truth is, they probably would not have, because they weren't sovereign. It wasn't a sovereign. They weren't sovereign. They weren't a free nation. The Maccabees, the Chashmonaim, were an independent nation. They weren't under anybody. That was the first time we were independent for many years. That would be the reason, actually.
In other words, the second temple was authorized by the
Persians.
Persians, yeah. Okay.
By Achashverosh's son.
Where was Cyrus in that?
He was Achashverosh's son.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, to get the timeline straight, they came into Israel, they had the Mishkan, and they upgraded from the Mishkan to the temple.
300 years later.
Right, but nothing was destroyed. They just upgraded from
Yeah.
Mishkan to with Shlomo. And then the first temple was destroyed, and then
400 years later.
400 years later, and then the people you're talking about drove the Greeks out of that first temple.
Second
Temple.
temple. They had to build. They had to rebuild the first one.
They rebuilt the first one.
So now it's the second.
Okay.
And so then the Greeks came in and wanted to make everybody assimilate.
Oh, but it wasn't destroyed yet. They were just.
Oh, it wasn't destroyed.
They were just.
Okay, so
occupying it.
the second temple was besieged 2 times, and the second time it was destroyed completely. The first time was with the Greeks, and the second time was with the Romans, and they destroyed it. Right? I don't think they besieged it the first time.
The
Greeks, they occupied it, no?
They occupied it, but that's not besieging.
Oh, okay.
And the Romans besieged.
Right.
Romans actually laid siege.
Right. They took it over and they destroyed it.
But
The Greeks didn't. The Greeks wanted to put their gods into it.
Right. Okay. And
Okay.
And then the people you're talking about drove the Greeks.
The Chashmonaim drove them out. The Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
So they're the ones who drove them out, and they're the ones who relit the menorah. And they're the ones who got the temple service going again. And like I said, they mess up and that they don't bring David's son back. But that would be the reason. And the second temple, because if they would have declared a king, that would have been treason to the other king. Unless Cyrus would have said, make a vassal kingdom and put up who you want. But I don't think he was that stupid to do it. Again, you may find somebody who disagrees. I'm not that good with that one. I don't remember that. I don't remember the Jews appointing any king at that point. Okay, let's continue. So it says, explaining the view of the Baha'alotcha's Gedolot, who reckon, and this is an amazing thing, they reckon the Hanukkah menorah, the lighting of the Hanukkah menorah is one of the 613 commandments. The Ramban said, can you imagine that? That's not biblical at all. That's rabbinic. So, but one person will say that is also one of the Tarek mitzvot. So the Ramban suggests that there is a commandment to celebrate the inauguration of the temple or the renewal of the altar that took place after the Hanukkah miracle by bringing special and unprecedented offerings as the tribal princes did in the wilderness. These offerings serve the function of Hodah, giving thanks for being able to dedicate or rededicate an instrument through which to serve Hashem. Aaron felt wounded that he had not been able to join the princes in this form of thanksgiving. In response to this, Hashem informed Aaron that not only offerings, but the kindling of the menorah is an expression of thanks. That is why kindling was instituted as the commemoration of Hanukkah, when the temple was rededicated, and why this passage is read on the last day of Hanukkah in conjunction with the offerings of the princes. That was Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik who said that. Yeah.
When they rekindled the Hanukkah lights on Hanukkah, was that an 8 menorah or was that 7? But we just make ours 8 because we don't want to make it like a menorah.
That was 7, and we make it like 8 because we're not allowed to make it like the menorah, right? So Or Chaim answers in a plain sense that the process of cleaning and the preparing of the lamps of the menorah required that they be removed literally or virtually every day. Thus, Aaron would in effect be building a menorah every single day because he had to bring it apart, put it back together, so on and so forth. Okay, but that's why we start off with this part, because we don't have to hear about the menorah here. We were hearing about There's princes. It should have gone to something else, but it's out of place, as it were. That's why everybody's asking on this. So then it just says, "Vayazken Aaron," and Aaron did so, and El Mupaneh Menorah Ha'ala. Opposite, he kindled the lamps as Hashem commanded Moshe toward. What was it? I just said that, right? Yeah, that's right. V'zeh Ma'aseh Menorah. This is the act of the doing of this is the workmanship of the menorah. Mixture zahav, it was beaten out of hammer out of gold. Ad recha ad pircha mikshahi, from the base of its to its flower, it was hammered out. And Ashehera Hashem et Moshe, that was shown to Moshe Ken Aseh the menorah. Thus the menorah was made. So thus he made the menorah. There's a question as to why Hashem had to show him the menorah. And so, if you remember last time, the question is who made the menorah too. But the question, Moshe said, I don't understand how to make it. So God gives me a fiery image. And Moshe says, I still don't know how to do it. It still doesn't make sense. So Hashem says, throw the ingot of gold, a measure, this gold piece in to the fire, and voila, the menorah came out. Okay, fine. And that's how that happened. So then after you see it, now you know how to put it together, right? Because that'll be one piece. Okay. Now let's go to the next part. Let's go to chapter, verse 23. Verse 23. So it's chapter 8, verse 23. So it says, here's another interesting thing. It says, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Zot Ashir LaLeviim. This shall apply to the Leviim. Miben Chamesh Hashem Shana V'mala. From 25 years old and up, Yavol is Vosava. They will serve Bavodat Ohel Moed in the service of the Ohel Moed. So Rashi says, wait a second. He says it says 25 here. In another place it says 30 years old. That they started 30 years old. So what is it? Is it 25 or 30 years old? You can't say both, right? So he says, so what's going on? He says, so he comes to teach us that that if somebody, we learn from here, what they're going to do is start learning the laws when they're 25, and by 30 they're going to know how to do it. They get a 5-year shimush. They get a 5-year study session. Okay, so why does it take 5 years? Sorry?
The 5-year plan.
Right. Yeah. So Rashi explains, and this comes from the Gemara Chulin, Mikan, the Talmud shelo ra'a siman yafeh b'mishnato b'chamesh shanim shuv eno ro'eh. That if somebody was learning, really learning, I'm not talking about going to school, and sitting there and taking up space. If somebody is really trying to learn, and they spend 5 years and they see no success, they will never seek success in that particular endeavor. It's not going to happen. If you really put 5 years of hard work into it and you don't see it, it's time to get a new profession. That's what the Gemara is saying. So it's an interesting thing that we're setting up. Again, it's not saying that a person shouldn't. Now here you have something too. I'm going to say this too. Let's say I learn Gemara. I'm learning a tractate of Gemara. I take some really easy Gemara, Zavachim. It's not easy at all. Okay, but I take a nice Gemara like Horiot, some of these crazy Gemara, very intense Gemaras. And what happens is, I really try to understand it. But I really have no background. I have the outschool, but the outschool is not helping. I have everything. Okay, and I put my time and I try to figure it out, and I ask people, but I have no background. You can't expect success even in 5 years because you don't have any background. On the other hand, if I would start from Chumash and I'm building myself up, building in a logical manner, starting from, like I said, Chumash, I go to Tanakh, and then I go to Tanakh, and then I go to Mishnah, and then I go to Gemara. The odds are I'm going to be successful. And it wouldn't be that difficult. It'll be long, but it won't be difficult. That is difficult, as if I just jump into it. It would be comparable to me right now going in and spending 5 years in learning quantum physics without knowing about what physics are. Again, I don't think I'm going to get it even in 5 years.
Without having the basic science.
Without having basic science, right? So that's what you're looking at. So the Gemara is saying that if you haven't seen success in 5 years, you won't see success anymore. Is based upon the assumption that you've gone through the basics. It's not saying that in general that if I do not add, you're not going to be able to add. You have to go slow, and once you've built up, you've built up. So that's an important thing to note. Okay, so now what happens? I skipped, right. So then it says, and then ben chamishim shana, and then for 50 years, yashuv mitzvah avodah, they shall leave the service, v'lo yavodah, and they no longer will do service. Again, this is Levim. What we're talking about, according to Rashi, is carrying the stuff on their shoulders, but they can still lock the gates and they can still sing, and so on and so forth. And why is it at 50 they stop? Because their strength is zapped after 50. So they're in work for 20 years, 25 years. They have to start learning, and then they have from age 30 to 50, and then that's it. Then you're over the hill, and you have to start doing something else. He says, he brings down what I just said, that it's an argument between Rashi and the Ramban. So Rashi says a 50-year-old Levite is forbidden only to bear the holy tabernacle artifacts on his shoulder, but he continues to perform the rest of the Levite service, such as singing, closing the temple gates, and loading the wagons, as implied by the next verse, which says that he serves in the tent of meeting. The Ramban maintains, however, that 50-year-olds withdrew from singing as well. It's once they're there. Retirement, forced retirement in the Torah. Yeah.
Well, how many people does it take to close a gate? Or do they take turns?
What? What do you mean to get the turns? You mean on pivots?
No, it's because it's saying like up until 50, they stop everything else except for singing and closing the gates. Does it take all the 50-year-olds to close the gates, or is it just like every week someone else closes the gates? Okay.
Yeah. So what he's saying though is that they again, that's according to Rashi. The only thing he's not doing is lifting, carrying it on his shoulders. Everything else he's doing. According to the Ramban, he's not going to do it. That's all. But closing, everything was a privilege. I mean, you're in the service of God. You have no farm. You have nothing to do all day. You're working twice 2 weeks out of a year, something like that. You're not working that much, and but when you're working, you're in the upper echelons of working. So when you're told you only have 20 years to work, think about that. Most people, we work 45 years. At least that was what it used to be, 45 years. Now it's 50 and 60 years that we're told we have to work before we can get retirement, before Social Security can actually kick in, assuming we have Social Security to talk about. But it's, think about that. People, you're 15, right? 15? 16. Also tough. When was your birthday? Okay, a long time ago. Okay. For both of you, I'm guessing. Okay. But it's you're 16. In 2 more years, you're independent. 18. In 2 more years, you're independent. And so you now can go out to work. At 19, well, you can actually get a license. At 16, right? So at 18 you can't drink yet. No, it's only at 21 you can drink it now. Okay.
Voting is 18.
Voting is 18. There you go. You can do something at 18. I knew you could do something at 18. But really become independent. And then many people would some people start working when they're 16. I mean, not for the parents. Talking about going out to work. So imagine that. You're going at 16 and you're not retiring normal thing until 70 these days. 70, right? 70 is enrollment retirement already.
60, it could be. You start at 16, you're pretty close to 60 years.
60 years, and they only got 20 years.
About pushing the Social Security, the full retirement age up to 70.
That's right.
In the next several years.
And they only got 20 years. That's it, 20 years. That's all they got. Forced retirement. Okay, go away. Okay, so then we come to and that's so that, like I said, and this is Rosh Hashanah. Let's just finish it up. So he will minister with his brothers, Ba'al Moed in the tent of meeting, Lishmo Mishmar, to safeguard the charge, Yavod, but he no longer will do the service. So so shall you tell to the Levites concerning their charge. Good. Now we come to the second one. We come into Pesach Sheni. Okay, it says, like I said, in chapter 9, verse 1. We're going to talk about Pesach, the original Pesach first. Wow, I'm running out of time quick. Okay, so it says, look how much the Torah is telling us. Hashem spoke to Moshe in Midbar Sinai, the wilderness of Sinai. B'shana ha'shenit, in the second year, from the going out from Egypt. B'chodesh harishon lemor, in the first month, saying, Nisan. This is the second year. Notice they've been in the desert for 1 year. Okay? V'yasu b'nei Yisrael el pasuk mo'ado. And the Bnei Yisrael should make the Pesach in its proper time. Okay, and Be'arba Asa Yom, on the 14th day, on this month, Ben Harabayim, between the evenings, in other words, after 12 o'clock, and after Chatzot, in other words, after 12 in the afternoon. Okay, so Tazu Otov Mado, you shall do it in its proper time, Kichol Chotav, like all of its statutes, Kichol Mishrotav, and all of its laws, Tazu Otov, you should do it. Fine. So, yeah.
It says Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai.
Yeah.
Is that opposed to like on the mountain?
Yeah.
So this is
The area.
somehow significant as opposed to.
It's not what?
How significant is it that it's the wilderness as opposed to the mountain?
Well, he was talking. In other words, Revelation was no longer going on. He wasn't going to Revelation. Yeah. Once the Mishkan was built, and it was being there, so Hashem no longer called him up as it were to the mountain. Now Hashem would speak to him at the Mishkan only.
So then why would it say wilderness?
Because it's telling you where it was.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Yeah.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
Did they just hang out around Sinai Temple, Sinai Mountain?
Yep.
Okay.
They were living there. Yeah.
And until they made the golden calf, until they went.
That
to
was
the
40
land of
days
Israel,
after.
Until they went to the land of Israel, and then did the spy thing, and then they had to go around the wilderness for 40 years.
38 more. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And also the second question is, what does Sinai mean?
Does that mean something?
I don't know, because you say all Jewish.
It means Sinai. It can mean a lot of things, but what are you saying? It means what?
Sinai. What does it mean? Like
Abraham.
yeah, Av means father.
Oh.
It's like different Hebrew words.
It can mean a lot of different. I'm not sure right now, but there's a lot of different things it could mean.
Yeah.
And there's sneh comes from the bush. You're reading, it will be the same denominative. The one to go to that, if you really want to know, you will go. If you go to Hirsch, right there, the Hirsch in Shemot, he looks in the word Sinai. He's very big into entomology. So he would say what sneh is, why sneh, why is Sinai, why sneh, what's the similarity between them, and that would help. But that's the best source you can go to. For something like that. Okay. So like I said, so God's commanding to do this, and what happens? Vayidaber Moshe b'nei Yisrael lasu Pesach. So Moshe spoke to b'nei Yisrael to make the Pesach offering. And what happens? V'yasu the Pesach. They made the Pesach b'rishon on the first day. I'm sorry, not the first day. In the first month, b'rishon the first month, ba'arba asa yom, the chodesh bein arbayim, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings, as it were, and that's in the afternoon, like I said. Okay, and then what happened? B'midbar Sinai, again, in the wilderness of Sinai, like all that Hashem commanded Moshe, Cain asu ben Israel, so thus they did. Now, like I said, this becomes a problem, because Rashi explains, first of all, he explains two things. One, I forgot the first part. It says by Chodesh Harishon. The Torah is giving us a date, right? So it says by parsha Shabarosh Sefer, that if you look to the beginning of this book in Bamidbar, and if you just go back to page where is it? It's worthwhile seeing this. if you go to page 727, I'm guessing. That's right. It doesn't want to trump something. 727, right. So it says, he spoke to, the book opens up, and Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in the temple, in the meeting, the tent of meeting, on the first of the second month in the second year from the going out from Mitzrayim. Wait a second. We just read in the beginning of this book that we're already in the second month of the second year. And here we're saying in the first month of the second year. Well, it's out of order. Right?
Yeah.
This should have been written first.
Yeah.
Why are you going out of order? God had a bad editor? I don't know. He forgot something. What's going on here? So Rashi explains, but parsha, the first part when we said, we didn't say until Iyar. So what's it doing? A famous thing. Rashi says there is no chronological order to the Torah. Famous. There's no chronological order. You see one thing here, it doesn't mean because it was first that it was in order. It could have been wrong as well. So what do you want? What's going before that? In other words, it's not necessarily chronological order. And by the way, if you go to Bereshit, we never hear about the creation of water. Why? We only hear what's important. That's the point. There's no chronological order in the Torah. So you can hear one thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the other thing didn't happen. Yeah.
But we have a good idea of what happened when, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a good idea, but not from the Torah. We have that from our quote unquote history. Okay, but like I said, when you're looking at the Torah and you see this happening, wait a second, this should be the other way. We just learned over there. Again, it's also assuming that you paid attention to what was said before. If you didn't pay attention to what was said before, you're never going to get the question, and you're going to say, "What do I care?" Okay, but the point is that according to Rashi, the Ramban disagrees and says it's only out of order for. When it announces it's out of order, otherwise it always is in order, and then there's always going to be a reason for it to be out of order. Okay? That's the Ramban. But like I said, Rashi is famous. There's a very famous rule here. So now Rashi continues and says, why didn't the Torah open with this? And he says, because this was a great disgrace for Israel. Like I said before, that all 40 years that Israel was in the desert, they did not bring a Pesach except for this time. And why did they bring it? Because they couldn't have a circumcision. Why couldn't they have a circumcision? Because they didn't listen to Hashem, and they weren't willing to go into Israel in 3 days. Otherwise, all our history would be wiped out, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. But the fact is that this was a genai. This was a disgrace that we didn't have circumcision. Okay. So what happens? So they did it, great. Now he comes to the second part. Again, there was this group of men who came that said they were tamei because they had finished dealing with a dead person. So therefore they couldn't make the Pesach on that day. And they came before Moshe and before Aaron on that day. The question is, you came before Moshe and Aaron, why both? Just come to Moshe. If Moshe doesn't know, how should Aaron know? Right? You understand the question? If Moshe doesn't know the answer, so how is Aaron going to know? Aaron's not going to know. Only Moshe would know. So why are they coming to Aaron? And so Rashi says that they were learning in the base medrash, as it were. They were learning together, and people came in, so they didn't want it to be disrespectful to Aaron, so they included him in the question. But really, he has nothing to do with the question. And so they said, and those men said to him, Adam, we are impure of soul. Why should we miss out and not be able to bring the Korban Pesach? So, B'tov B'nai Israel. And amongst Bnei Israel. So Moshe says to them, Imdu v'eshma, stand there, I'm going to listen. Ma'asav Hashem lechem, to what Hashem is going to command you now. And again, a lot of here going on. The question is, does he say it here? Yeah. The Pesach Sheni, so on page 779, he says a group of people were ineligible to bring the offering because they were contaminated. Having an intense desire to participate in the great spiritual experience, they appealed to Moshe. In recognition of their nobility, Hashem made them the agents through whom he revealed the new commandments of Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, which would be brought a month after the appointed time for the Pesach. The normal course of the Torah is to give the commandments through Moshe rather than the initiative of others. But because of the sincere desire of these people for spiritual elevation, Hashem gave them the honor of bringing about the giving of this new commandment. The second Pesach differs from the first in that there is no festival associated, even for those bringing in the offering. Furthermore, although they may not eat leavened bread with the offering, they may possess and eat chametz on the day. The Talmud has three versions of who these contaminated people were. They were the bearers of the coffin of Yosef, bringing his remains to Eretz Yisrael for burial, or Mishael or El Safan, who dealt with the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, or men who came upon an unattended, unidentified corpse and had fulfilled the mitzvah of burying it. They became ineligible to bring the offering because they were engaged in performing a mitzvah. Consequently, this foreknows comments that they complained to Moshe that a mitzvah should bring another mitzvah in its wake and not deprive someone. So he says, we're contaminated. Though they did not question the fact that contaminated people are forbidden to bring the Pesach offering, they thought that an exception should be made for them because, as noted, their contamination was not their own fault, but was required. So, okay, there's also another thing that goes on here. He doesn't bring it down. So, yeah.
Was this corpse a Jewish corpse?
Yes. Yes.
So, how is it unidentified? Or if it was not Yosef
In other words, if somebody's left unattended, we don't know who it was. Could have been one of the people converted. Once you convert, you're still Jewish. So he says what they were saying to him was Rashi brings this down. He says, Amrulo, they said to him, Yozrok Adam Aleinu, throw blood on us, Kohanim Taharim, with Kohanim that are pure, V'yochal v'basar l'tmeim, and then, or that will eat the meat, for the Taharim, Amalehem imdu. So, in other words, they were saying, Moshe, you have ways to make other people good. Make us good, Rabbi. And he says, wait, you have to wait. Yeah.
They not have the red heifer thing yet?
Even if they did, it would take 7 days.
Oh, right.
They want instantaneous.
Right.
Okay, we'll have to stop here. So, good Shabbos. Remember, not until